Morning. Joe Farm? Oh, right, okay. Massive paper Bible for me. So, if you've got yours open, turn to Exodus chapter 17. Oh, do I need to use this?
No, it's all right,
I'm all right? Is in? Okay. I could just shout. So, near the beginning of the Bible, Exodus chapter 17, starting at verse 1. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, travelling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarrelled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Walk on ahead of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarrelled and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning, but whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "For hands were lifted up to the throne of the Lord. The Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation."
Thanks, Tracy. Good morning, everybody. And for those who don't know me, I'm Mark. I'm one of the ministers of this place. And it's my job it's my privilege to bring the sermon for today. But before we do that, by the way, keep your Bibles open. We're going to look at that passage in just a moment. I want to take you to Africa. Who wants to go to Africa? Okay, but only in your imagination. Sorry about this. So a few years ago, I was on a missions trip to Africa. And on one of our days off, we went to Kruger National Park, where lots of wild animals are. And we go there to take pictures and see all these brilliant animals. And we were going, and we traveled a long time. Kruger's about the size of Wales. I think we traversed most of it, because we spent hours. We couldn't find a single animal. I mean, it was like 38 degrees. So we were wondering if they're in their air-conditioned shop somewhere. We don't know. But we drove everywhere. And then one of our guys in the car spotted an elephant. And so we drove towards it, and they're taking pictures, and thought, oh, at least one elephant. And then they thought, oh, more over there. So they turned the corner of the road, and then there's elephants on our right and on our left. And they took more pictures, and they're going, this is amazing. Look at all these elephants. And then we went, hang on a second. Are we in the middle of a herd? And it crossed our mind the same time as it crossed the bull elephant that was right in front of us. The one flapping his ears and trumpeting. And seriously, he was really not happy with us. He trumpeted and he charged towards us. Now, 10 tons, 25 miles an hour, that's a scary thing. Our driver rammed it into reverse, and thankfully no one was behind us, and had to go away because that elephant was not stopping. So a little African hint here, respect elephants, okay? A little later that day, the animals had come out from their air-conditioned place. There's loads of animals around, the zebras running around. And we're driving along this road, and then we spotted ahead of us to the right another bull elephant. Now, we learned from the morning is you respect elephants. So we're driving slowly. Leon, if you hear at my induction, Leon, who preached my induction, he was driving. And Leon's driving slow. And just keeping an eye on this elephant, who is clearly a little bit narked with us already. And then Lee, his friend, who sat in front of next to Leon, he said, Leon, drive a little bit further away from the elephant. I think he's a bit agitated. And so Leon went, absolutely, no. So he drove a little bit on the edge of the road away from him. And then Lee goes, no, away from the elephant. And we all went, he did, the elephant's there. And Lee goes, no, not that elephant, that elephant. And Leon stopped the car, as you would, and we were 5 feet away from, I was on that side as well. I looked into those elephant eyes, and I think he was as shocked as we were shocked, thankfully. His ears were flapping, and he was deciding, what do I do to these idiots? And we're going, idiot, drive, and drove away. So, when it comes to elephants, respect them, keep an eye out for them, okay? Just to let you know, very helpful in Fishponds, keep an eye out for elephants. I'll come back in a minute. In our mornings together, we're looking at a series called Friend of God, specifically looking at the Old Testament character of Moses. Moses is described in Exodus 33 as a friend of God. So we're trying to learn from him, what does it mean to be a friend of God? What insights and lessons does Moses encounter and learn that we can as well, as we are invited to be friends of God as well by Jesus in John 15. If you've missed any of the series, you can catch up on podcast or our YouTube channel. But today, the lesson about a friend of God is this, is friends of God have eyes to see. Okay, have eyes to see. 4 things I want to have eyes to see we get from this passage that Tracy read just a few moments ago. The first thing is this, is friends of God have eyes to see beyond themselves to God's bigger plan. They have eyes to see beyond ourselves to God's bigger plan. Now, the people of Israel, these people who had just been freed from slavery, they were not very good at this. Because every time they hit a crisis, what they did is they just panicked and grumbled and got angry. In this reading, we pick them up again, and they are angry and almost wanting to kill Moses. They were quarreling with him. And it's incredible, really, because, okay, a lack of water is serious. It definitely is. But remember, these are the people who just months earlier were released dramatically from slavery in Egypt. They saw God part the Red Sea. They saw God make bitter water sweet. Just the chapter before, in Exodus 16, they were whinging about we need food, and God provided manna. So think about it. That all that God had done, that morning they collected manna to fill in their faces, and they still went, yeah, but we haven't got any water, have we? And they got mad. That was a mouthful impression there. I'm not sure if that worked. But the manna they collected in the morning, what God did that morning wasn't enough to actually lift their eyes. All they saw is, yeah, but we have no water. So what they did is they grumbled and complained and they quarreled and they argued with Moses. Is they were so focused on themselves and their need that they had forgotten, couldn't see again what God had done that very morning, and what God was calling them to. God was bringing them to a new promised land. But actually there, then and there now in front of their faces, was the thing that stopped them seeing God's bigger plan. Now, although we are a long way away from that situation, we actually can find ourselves doing the same. Is we can find ourselves going in life and then bumping into a little bit of a catastrophe, life blowing up in a major way or a minor way. Maybe our health taking a bump turn and being really difficult. Maybe family or relationships with friendships or those around you just go sour and it gets really challenging. Maybe finances certainly go down the drain and it just gets very complicated. It may be a big thing, it might be a small thing. It may be a tap that just bursts its seals and there's water everywhere and you need to get a plumber. And it could be anything like that, big or small. And what happens is our immediate need, it blocks and blinds out to who God is. That God actually has a bigger story, the bigger story of who God is, what he's done, what God is doing, and what God's called us to do. Now, these things are important and are serious that we need to deal with them, but what happens is that we can so easily find our own perspective gets so big that it blots out all of who God is and what he's done. The good news of what God has done is many of us will know, is that God actually became one of us in Jesus, lived an incredible life, died and rose again. And in doing so, he's offered us life with him. He's offered us relationship with him. He's offered us love and forgiveness. He says, I want you to be part of my family, to know what it is to be together. He says, I'll fill you with my spirit, the power of the living God to be in us. And he says, and I want you to be part of my mission, part of my witness. In Matthew 5, Jesus says that you are the light of the world. You are a beacon on a hill. You are the people who are there to share the light and love of Jesus to all those around, that all may see who God is. But the thing is, our now can so easily eclipse all of who God is and what God's done. Despite what God has done today, we can just forget and go, yeah, but my need is the most important. It's so important for us to have eyes that see beyond our own immediate need and see that God has a bigger plan unfolding. Because when we do that, when we remember that we are called to be a light to this world, to share the light and love of Jesus in all we do, and we join what God's plan is, it is incredible because our whole perspective changes. I've shared in the past that whenever I get my hair cut, I always pray going into the hairdressers is, God, will you just give me an opportunity to have a God conversation with the person? Because, I mean, they're snipping away at your head and they're stuck there for 15 minutes, aren't they? So, I mean, they're a captive audience. True, they have a sharp weapon, so you don't want to go too far, okay? Always bear that in mind. But I always pray, saying, God, will you just give me an opportunity to share something of you in my conversation? Sometimes nothing happens. It just doesn't happen. Other times it's really interesting and some very interesting conversations unfold. Presently I go to the barber's just along the road here, and it's run by a Muslim chap. And we talk about faith. It's just incredible conversations with faith. But I remember once, it wasn't here, back in my old place, I had a new lady who was cutting my hair. And as she found out that I was a minister of a church, and she goes, oh, that's really interesting. She said, my sister has just got really involved with church. And I said, oh, really? What made that happen? She goes, I don't know. She just started going to a church. And I said, well, has it made any difference? And she said, actually, I see a massive difference in her. I said, oh, like what? She said, she just seems happier. She seems to be a bit more secure, just lots of really good things. And I said, oh, that sounds amazing. I said, what about you? Have you ever tried to, find out yourself? She goes, well, the thing is, my sister lives a long way away from here. She lives in Andover. And I said, oh, really? Well, what church does she go to? And she goes, oh, Andover Baptist. And I went, do you know what? This is good. You won't believe this, but I used to be the minister of Andover Baptist. And she goes, really? And we had a massive chat around that and about God and sort of Jesus in the midst of that. And then she goes, okay, Dan, she holds them, even though I'm blind, they hold the mirror up the back of my head. And I can't see it. And yeah, I'm sure it's great. And then she's just finishing brushing me down as they do. And she goes, do you know what? I think I might have a look at church myself. And I said, do it. Have nothing to lose. Go and have a look. Now, I have no idea what happened to the rest of her story. I don't know. Never saw her again. I don't know. But tell me, do you think God is doing something in that lady's life? Do you think that next time she speaks to her sister, that she's going to go, you'll never guess whose hair I just messed up? Sorry, cut. And the God conversation would continue. See, when God says, lift your eyes above yourselves and be part of God's bigger plan, this is not God saying that those challenges that you face, big or small, are not challenges. He's not saying they're not important. In our reading, God knows that they need water, and God provided water for them again, just as he's providing food for them. But what he's saying is, guys, you are missing what I'm calling you. I'm calling you to see and to experience and to do. Remember that I am a faithful God. Don't go into quarrels every time. Remember that I'm a God who changes things. Remember, I'm a God who provides, not just in the past, not just now, but in the future as well. Definitely bring your needs to me, but remember that I'm a God who's bigger. And go bigger than just your needs. Understand that God has a plan, and he says you can be involved with that plan. In small ways and in big ways, but you can be part of that because you are the light of the world. You are a beacon on a hill sharing the light and love of Jesus. And Jesus followers, friends of God, we need to have eyes that go above ourselves and our challenges and our pressures and our distractions and say, God, but what have you done and what are you doing and what do you want me to be involved in? So the first thing we see from our reading is we need eyes to see beyond ourselves. The second thing we need to see second thing we need to see is to have eyes that there is an enemy trying to stop us. Verse 8, it says that the Amalekites attacked the Amalekites? Yeah, well, the Amalekites, the Amalekites. Yeah, I thought it was. I just had a little bit there. It was the Amalekites were attacking. Now, who thinks that it takes a lot of eyes to see if you're being attacked? Is that pretty obvious? Did Moses had eyes to see that the Amalekites were attacking, and you're going, well, that's pretty obvious, really, because, there's an army attacking you. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Well, actually, scholars go, it probably wouldn't have been that obvious. Because the Amalekites were a nomadic people. So instead of having cities, as they roamed around and set up camps. Now, the people of Israel were moving from Egypt to this promised land where God was taking them. And they needed to cross the land that the Amalekites did their nomadic roamings over. So basically, it was their territory. They thought it was their land. And with the Israelites passing through, the Amalekites got unhappy, and so they didn't draw battle lines and attack them. What they probably would have done is done little raiding parties to nip them from the sides and the back and to ambush them in little different ways. And what Moses could see is these little raiding parties were actually part of a more orchestrated attack. And this is really important for us to see, is that we are not being physically attacked by people with swords, but we too are in a battle. When Jesus died and rose again, that was actually a spiritual battle that he was overcome the powers of this dark world. And Jesus has won the war by his death and resurrection. But until Jesus returns again, we are still in a battle. It says in Ephesians 6 that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, the authorities of this dark world. And we are in a battle in the heavenly realms, in that spiritual realms. Basically, there is a battle that's going on, that we too are facing an enemy that doesn't want us to be a beacon on a hill, that doesn't want us to encounter and know God or share God more. And the thing is, the enemy is a little bit like the Amalekites. It doesn't draw battle lines very often. What it does is just sneaks at us and has a little go at us. And he does that by, see if you recognize any of these things, okay? He blurs the line between truth and lies. Have you noticed that about, well, that's your truth. It's fake news. Or is it fake news? And it's true. Well, have you watched news and you're going, no, it's clearly true. Well, you say it's true, but I'm not. Anyone confused with that? And that's more normal. And what happens is you then drop the truth of Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life. And you're going, well, that's just true for you. And what the enemy does is he just blurs that. Or about division and fear. Have you noticed a slight rising of fear when you watch the news? There's a fear, and not just in the news out there, but the news in society, there is a growing fear. And I think that's an enemy tactic, because when you're fear, you don't trust people. You don't trust people like them. You don't trust people not like you. There's about the enemy also uses that attack of focusing our hope in different areas. It takes our hope off of God and wanting to seek to follow God, and says, well, put your hope, if you have enough money, it could be you, and you could actually, life would change. Or if this would happen, a new government, a new this, a new that. And what we do is we find that we are getting distracted so easily from what God is calling us to do. And what God wants us to see, that there is an enemy attacking. Now, please hear me correctly. I'm not saying that every tough thing that happens around us is a spiritual attack. Everything that happened to the Israelites was not the Amalekites attacking them. However, there were things that were attacked by the enemy. And Moses had the eyes to see, hang a second, there's something happening here. And we too, as friends of God, we need to understand, we need to see that we have an enemy who wants to stop us acknowledging God, focusing on God, and following God. And he does that in subtle ways, sometimes big, sometimes small. And it's really important to have eyes to see that, because once we see that, then we can do something about that. Which leads us to the third thing that we need eyes to see. We need eyes to see beyond ourselves, and that God is bigger. We need eyes to see there's an enemy that wants to stop us. Thirdly, we need eyes to see that we need to take action. In verse 9, Moses said, Joshua, get some of the blokes around and we need to deal with this. Now, this is not a call to arms. It's not pull your sword out, anything like that. But what it is understanding that we need to be people who understand what the enemy is trying to do. And we need to say, actually, we want to shine brighter. We need to purposely bring the truths of Jesus into the situations that we have. It's fantastic to meet together, to worship together, and to praise together. But actually, God calls us to be engaged with the mission of God as well, to share the light and love of Jesus in all we do. As a church, thanks Neil, as a church, we are involved with lots of things. We do tons of stuff. But you know, we're not just a community center that's doing lots of good social action. God does not call us to be a community center that does social action. God calls us to be his church, his family, that's like a beacon on the hill and shines the light and love of Jesus in all we say and all we do. That's why we do things as a church. That's why we work with our kids. Our children's work downstairs right now and in the youth hall doing the Youth Alpha and other things we do to reach our young people, with parents and toddlers, with things during the week with our seniors, with those who are on the fringe of society and those who are in the mainstream part of society. This is why we run food banks on every Friday. This is why we're part of a soup run. This is why we run 2 Hope into Action houses. This is why we do Mentor Me and help those who are ex-offenders. We are involved with things not just because we're really nice people. We're doing this because we are taking action to share Jesus in positive ways. I want to encourage you. I'm really thrilled that you're here. I'm really thrilled that you're watching online. I'm really thrilled, and I hope you are growing and you're connecting more with God. But I want to encourage us to have eyes to see that action is required, for us to get involved, to commit, to be involved with some of these things that we're doing. Not just church, okay? Church, we organize stuff, and it's an easy entry into some of the things, into taking action. But God calls us also to take action at home, at work, in our communities, to be a light in those situations, to stand up and bring God's truth there. We need to do it wisely and sensibly, but we're called to take action about the enemy's force around our society. I said that I was a minister in Andover Baptist many years ago, and we're in Andover. Our kids were really small. And I remember Kathy once, she went into, anyone remember Blockbusters? Not the game, the place where you bought films and things, yeah? I know now it's all online and everything, but it's a big shop that used to get videos and things like that in. And Kathy was going in and getting something, and Kathy noticed that all of the X-rated films, she wasn't looking for them, she just noticed it, okay? Were at the bottom shelf, right at the pram level where the kids were. I'll get there. Okay, their X were all at the bottom, and that's where all the kids' level is. And Kathy went to the manager and said, "Do you know, it's just, why are all these dodgy things right at the bottom?" And the guy said, "Well, it's our policy it's actually the national policy to do the films alphabetically. So when you get down to X, it's at the bottom." And Kathy said, "Well, yeah, but surely that's not sensible." And he said, "It's just national policy." And he goes, "I cannot change it." He said, "Well, you can write to head office if you want." So Kathy went, "I'm going to write to head office." So Kathy wrote to head office. She wasn't going, "I'm a Christian and this is terrible, you sinners." She didn't do that. She said, we have a responsibility to protect young eyes and cares and say, okay, I guess some people might want to watch this sort of stuff, but actually we want to protect our kids. Can we actually, if you have to display them, can they be way up above that eye level? And the regional manager said, "Well, I'm in the office. Will you come into the Blockbuster's office and meet me?" So Kathy went, okay. She met him. And Kathy again explained to him the situation. I think he realized that she wasn't a nutter. Well, an extreme nutter. She was sensible. And it was an argument that there's truth there. And he went, "Do you know what? You got a real point." And they changed the national policy because of that. I know some are wowing, but I think that was pretty amazing. And it was just by Kathy going, "This shouldn't be right, and I've got to stand up for what's true to share the light and life of Jesus." And just by writing a sensible letter in and meeting, it changed it. We need to take action. And it may be in our personal, it may be at work, it may be at home, it may be through one of our church things, but can I encourage us that we have eyes to see that we need to take action? If we just sit on a Sunday and sing our songs and don't do anything else, the enemy's loving it because he's just going to be attacking away and melting away and pulling away from the truth of God. It doesn't say we got to go out with swords and fight, but actually let's stand for truth and share Jesus in a loving way and let Jesus shine, because that's the fourth point. The fourth point is we need eyes. So we need eyes to see above ourselves, beyond ourselves. We need eyes to see there's an enemy. We need eyes to see that we need to take action. And fourthly and lastly is we need eyes to see it's God who wins the battle. Check out verse 11. Well, Joshua is fighting the Amalekites with sword and battle. On the hill is Moses, Aaron, and Hur, lifting up the hands and praying in the situation. And it said when Moses had his hands in the air, they won, and his hands dropped, they lost. So tell me, where was the battle won? Was it on the field with Joshua or on the mountain with Moses? It was both. It was both. It was both, because if it was both, absolutely both. But in God's perspective, God's going, it was both because you need to take action. But God says, but you need to understand it's I who win the war. It wasn't Joshua and it wasn't Moses. It was God who wins. If you look at verse 14, he says to Moses, "Moses, write this down so it can be remembered, and tell Joshua this. It's God who wins the war. It's God who wins. It's God who changes situations. It's God who heals hearts. It's God who parts seas. It's God who provides water from stones. It's God who makes bitter souls sweet. It's God who heals. It's God who changes. It's God, it's God, it's God." We need eyes to see that we need to be involved with the action. We need to be involved in prayer, be that prayer before something happens, during, after, joining at 7 o'clock today and praying with others in prayer. Be that when we run alpha courses, we do prayer at the same time as alpha courses. Prayer is so key, but it's God who wins it. We need eyes to see it's Jesus who changes situations. The situation you're in right now, you need to take action. You need to see there's an enemy. You need to understand it's God who changes situations. What we learn from this passage from Moses is that friends of God have eyes to see above themselves, eyes to see there is an enemy attacking, eyes to see that action is required. We need to purposely get involved, and eyes to see it's God who wins the battle. I wonder right now, what do you need to see? I'm going to risk of being very corny here, okay? Just brace yourself. What elephant in the room are you not seeing? What does God say? I need you to see this, because I am the one who changes things. Just see that, what he's done, who he is, what he's calling us to do, what he's calling us to be a part of. God's saying, I want you to have eyes to see that I am the one who changes things. This is bow our head in prayer. Father, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your patience, God. The people in Israel who just kept grumbling. They kept tripping over the exact same thing. And from afar, I look back and read, and I'm going, oh, why can't they learn? But God, I'm sure you think that of me as well. Think that of many of us. We keep tripping over the same stupid things. Father, I pray that we might have eyes to see. We might have eyes to see you. We might have eyes just to see what you're calling us to be part of. You might have eyes to see that you want us to get involved, and eyes to see that you're the one who changes. Jesus, I pray that right now, by your Spirit, you'll just help us to see what you want us to see. And we also, Jesus, declare that above all, you are the one who saves us. You're the one who changes situations. You're the one who changes this world, for you are the way, the truth, and the life. I want to just speak Jesus over your lives and your situations right now. Jesus, will you just rest in people's lives? Those hearts that don't know you, those hearts that are a bit cold towards you, those hearts that are just weary and heavy laden, those hearts that are overwhelmed, those hearts that are far from you, those hearts that going, I'm here, but I just need more. Jesus, I just pray right now they may know you are the God who wins. You are the God who loves. You are the God who calls. Come. Come and open the eyes of our hearts so that we can see you. Jesus, the Savior of this world. Amen. We're going to sing that song, I Speak Jesus. I encourage you to this to be a part of your prayer response. And just what are those situations that you need to speak Jesus into, to open our eyes and see. And let this song be a prayer as we continue to worship God.